We are getting dangerously close to the end of the college football season, which means we're close to getting the final version of the college football playoff bracket. But until then, we'll continue to guess. So here is Brad Crawford's latest best guess. So we're going to walk through each round with the creator of this bracket because we've been throwing out guess brackets all year long. I want to start filling out some of these holes so we can talk championships here. So Brad Brackets joins us. Brad, I'm going to start with the OU v. OU. We have Oklahoma and Oregon in a first-round game in Eugene. Who wins?
That would be an awesome matchup, but I think Oregon wins that matchup. You know, the Ducks and Oklahoma's defense is very. Excuse me, I'm taking Oklahoma apparently.
I was going to say
defense, yes. Yeah, it's elite, and Brent Venables has shown these last couple of weeks beating Tennessee on the road in a playoff elimination game for the Sooners, doing it again against Alabama in another playoff elimination game, and getting 3 turnovers in that game. Oklahoma's a team that as long as they win out against Missouri and LSU, they'll get to the playoff and get a road game at Oregon. And Oregon, Emily, just is not battle-tested enough. I think Oklahoma wins that game.
I confused you with the whole OU and OU. So Oklahoma wins that game. Yeah, we already saw Oregon look like they can lose a game at home when they lost to Indiana earlier in the season. So Eugene, Autzen, maybe not as scary as it once was. Now let's go to a battle for some Texas supremacy. I love this idea. North Texas versus Texas Tech. Who are you going with?
Yeah, it's been a matchup of mine the last couple of weeks. You know, we've said that it would feed families in the Lone Star State. And now that Texas is likely out of the playoff mix, I think the Mean Green of North Texas are going to win the American, get that G5 bid over James Madison, another team that's probably going to finish 12-1 and play Texas Tech. But that's where the story ends for North Texas. First playoff appearance, they're going against one of the top defenses in college football, Joey McGuire in Texas Tech. That's going to be your Big 12 champion.
All right, so that seed right there has been up for grabs all season long. It will go down to the wire. Another one, too, is what happens in the ACC. You've got Georgia Tech with that spot, but they have to face the Alabama Crimson Tide, which this will be a tough one for Brent Key, former Bama offensive line coach.
Yeah, Georgia Tech's my projected ACC champion. I know the selection committee likes Miami right now, but I don't see a path for Miami to get to that bracket. I think Georgia Tech gets there winning the ACC. However, they will not beat Alabama. That's going to be a absolute zoo of an environment, Bryant-Denny, probably a night game in that first round. And Ty Simpson sort of lost handle of the Heisman race over the weekend with that loss to Oklahoma, but I think he plays well in the first round and beats the Yellow Jackets.
So you've got the Irish are in Notre Dame in this bracket. They'll have to face off against Ole Miss, but you think maybe Kiffin one and done?
Yeah, first round upset here. I like the 10th seed of Notre Dame. Not only has Notre Dame played extremely well these last few weeks, I think Ole Miss is going to have that distraction factor. What if Lane Kiffin takes one of these SEC vacancies and maybe the Rebels are under an interim coach for their first round game? That could possibly happen. We haven't seen the coach take a job and then leave his team before the playoff yet, but it's bound to happen eventually in this 12-team scenario. So I like Notre Dame to move on there and face Texas A&M in that second round.
But Brad, we have seen an offensive coordinator leave his job before a playoff game, and that was Lane Kiffin at Alabama. So who knows? Maybe this could happen again. Let's move on to the quarterfinal round. So Oklahoma's gift for beating Oregon and Eugene is they get to play the defending national champs. What happens in that game?
Yeah, first one to 14 points wins this game. That would be an ugly game at Ohio State. But I think Ohio State is the obviously team to beat. They're the prohibitive favorite all season long, basically from start to finish. Since beating #1 ranked Texas in that opener, Emily, Ohio State has looked the part really on both sides of the ball. Julian Sayin and obviously Caleb Downs and Arvell Reese on defense. This is where the season ends for Oklahoma. I think Ohio State wins by a couple touchdowns there in the second round.
It's what Ohio State tends to do in their opening game in the college football playoff based on what we saw from them last year. You talk about teams just taking care of business, looking good on both sides of the ball. I go to the Georgia Bulldogs, which you have getting a bye in this bracket and facing Texas Tech, who won their opener against North Texas.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that Georgia misses the SEC championship game and still gets that bye based on this upcoming win I'm projecting against Georgia Tech. You know, Georgia's a team that I would say right now in mid-November is the SEC's best team. That's despite the fact A&M's undefeated. Alabama obviously has that win at Georgia. I think right now, though, Georgia's playing the best football, and I think Georgia beats Texas Tech as the SEC's third-seeded team in the playoff, and Texas Tech being the Big 12 champion.
Oh, there you have it. It's pretty easy to find an Alabama assistant coaching, and so we got another rematch. Curt Cignetti in Indiana going up against Alabama in this quarterfinal round. Who do you have winning that game?
The biggest win in program history would happen if Indiana beats Alabama here, and I think it does. Curt Cignetti against Kalen DeBoer, two offensive-minded guys. Fernando Mendoza, probably your Heisman winner of this season, going up against Ty Simpson. I think the last team with the football wins, and Indiana moves on to its first semifinal appearance in program history.
Wow, how many points do we expect in that game? Quite a few with these high-powered offenses. Finally, the last quarterfinal round, you've got Notre Dame and Texas A&M. So the Aggies, your SEC champ?
They're the SEC champ. However, Notre Dame gets revenge in the rematch. You remember Marcel Reed led that fourth quarter drive at Notre Dame to beat the Irish in September in South Bend. I think Notre Dame gets its revenge right here. Jeremiah Love goes over 100 yards. 10th seeded Notre Dame, sort of like Ohio State's path last season, gets to the semifinal against another rematch of a playoff game in 2024, Indiana versus Notre Dame.
Wow. Okay, so Notre Dame just going through this bracket, exercising some demons, getting some rematches there. Of course, Notre Dame won the initial game against Indiana last year. We'll get to that matchup in a sec, but the other two in the Final Four, Ohio State and Georgia, this is a helmet matchup, Brad. These are two huge brands. Who wins that game?
Georgia's toughest matchup of the year. Obviously, Kirby Smart has beaten Ryan Day in playoff semifinal before, beat C.J. Stroud in Atlanta a couple years ago. Very good game there with Marvin Harrison Jr.'s injury. I think Ohio State, as the top seed, wins this match. And the Buckeyes are a team, like we said from the outset, there is a reason that they are the betting favorite to go back-to-back under Ryan Day. This is the toughest game of the year, but I think Ohio State gets it done in the semifinal.
Oh, so Ohio State back to another national championship game. Who will they be playing in the battle for the state of Indiana?
Let's run it back. Ohio State versus Notre Dame again, like we saw in January in Atlanta. And I think Ohio State wins. I just cannot take the 10th seeded Notre Dame Irish to beat Ohio State. I think Ohio State goes front to back unbeaten this season. Have not been tested yet. I do think it happens, maybe against Oklahoma in the second round, perhaps against Georgia in the semis. But Ohio State, Notre Dame, it's a bad matchup for the Irish. And that long winning streak for Notre Dame finally ends against the Buckeyes.
Wow. So how much does that worry you? You kept mentioning it, that the Buckeyes have not quite been tested so far this year. How much does that worry you when you're making them as your national championship pick?
Yeah, I think the narrative's a little bit overblown. I mean, in a season, Emily, where maybe there's 2 or 3 really elite teams and then maybe 6 or 7 in that second tier, I just think Ohio State takes the cake. And maybe here in a couple weeks at Michigan, Ohio State plays a fourth quarter game and sort of gets those demons out of the way and beats the Wolverines before going to the playoff.
Yeah, this would be a very different Ohio State team, having lost 2 games in the regular season before winning it all last year, but walking into another national championship with a perfect season. Brad Crawford, thank you so much for doing that fun exercise for us. We'll see in a few weeks, few months, really, if you are correct. The odds makers, they agree with Brad, though. Ohio State is the favorite. Indiana and A&M round out the top 3, just like the polls say. But Notre Dame with the 4th highest odds to win it all.